fucking friend. No! Yes! Oh, oh. Hey, look at that. It is a PoE video after long last. Since this is actually the first time that I can consider a character, I wouldn't say finished, but finished well enough for me to finally make a video on it. And that's not a character I came up with. This is, as usually, following a guide and then putting my own little spin of it on it, based out of necessity and not having the currency to buy into the full gear that such a build would require. But the build I'm talking about is Velena's Ice Trap Sab with medium to high medium investment. And that's the second build I've been playing since 3.20, the Forbidden Sanctum, came out. I actually did League start with a Trickster. I leveled a Poisonous Concoction Trickster, which was super comfortable in the early Sanctums, definitely, especially like in white and in yellow maps. It was just a blast. Killing the guards was super quick, and killing the Sanctum bosses, the floor bosses, was super easy. Never got to the end though, because as soon as I hit yellow maps, I made the mistake to spec into the build I actually wanted to play, which was Caustic Arrow Ballistas, and I totally did not have the gear for that. As you might know, Rain of Splinters, this league is kind of rare and expensive, and also a 6-link Covenant, which you kind of need for this build, was not in my reach. So I somewhat spent the first 1.5 weeks of the league struggling to get the Caustic Arrow Ballista guy to work, and then eventually gave up because I didn't have the money to push the build further to acquire the items that would make the build better, and I didn't have the patience to grind for it, and mapping with a subpar Caustic Arrow Poison Trickster was really not that nice, to put it gently. Yeah, and then I switched to this build, so I re-rolled completely, built myself a Trickster, and leveled Ice Trap all the way from the beginning when I could into endgame. And this is super enjoyable. I'm just gonna, oh wait, there's a thing, let me just hit that. What do we want? Yeah, sure, let's get this one, why not? Let me just get to the boss. You've seen the mapping footage, it's super smooth. I'm actually never in danger, even though I run into things and map mods do get kind of rippy. It's still totally fine. And bosses is basically... Now, this is an elemental resist map, but you get the gist. It's monster elemental resist, and it's monster avoid ailments. So usually everything is frozen with this build. Not so much if there's too much resist, but still it's very comfortable. And as you have seen from the very beginning of the clip, I was actually able to kill Fiat with this, which is something that I've never done before. As a matter of fact, I never even attempted the Fiat. And this was the very first league where I was like, okay, let's give it a go, because Uber Elder was a breeze, did that deathless. Awaken not deathless. Maven I killed. I had one death because I screwed up the memory game, but the rest was like super easy. And every boss is just, it's just a complete breeze because they're slowed like crazy, and sometimes you can even freeze them, and then nothing really happens to you because if everything's frozen, you don't take any damage. So really, really comfortable build. Plus, dropped a few good nuggets here and there. There are differences to the build that Velena put out. The link to that, to the build guide, is in the description. Also, the link to the YouTube video is there. So let me go over the basics and then also into the changes that I've made. So let's start with the skill itself. That is pretty self-explanatory. A 2120 Ice Trap, linked with Inspiration, Charge Traps, Swift Assembly, Cold Pen, and Increased Critical Strikes. This is a normal Cold Pen, not an Awakened Cold Pen. One of the reasons being that I couldn't afford an Awakened Cold Pen. You needed it to be at level 6, so you get 10% exposure on hit, and that costs a divine or more, even 2 divines, I think. And I could not get to afford that. Because I didn't have an Awakened Cold Pen for the longest time, I was actually using Frostbomb with Hypothermia and Bone Chill. I would put that on bosses or on tougher rares to debuff them to offset the fact that I don't have an Awakened Cold Pen. This also was usually before that in a trigger weapon. I have since removed that and I'm now casting it manually ever since I dropped this Sanctified Relic, which inflicts minus 15 cold exposure, which is more than an Awakened Cold Pen could give me. Now, if you want to have more damage, you can have a different relic and then still use Awakened Cold Pen, but I was happy with this combination. And thus I removed the trigger craft from this, and I'm still using it for rares or bosses that have crazy regen, because you can still offset that regen a little bit. Moving on from there, movement is just simple Flame Dash with Arcane Surge. That gives me a little bit of mana regen and spell damage. Spell damage being the important thing, mana regen also being important because I'm not using Slave Driver's Hand. Also a couple of reasons for that. Slave Driver's Hand, kind of expensive, and I did not want to get rid of those gloves. This is one of the few items that I actually found myself and crafted from the bottom up. I mean, I found it as it is and I just crafted the life on it, and then I put the Eldritch Implicits on there with the 4% increased damage per frenzy charge being the highlight here, which if I take this off, I lose a lot of damage. I mean, yes, Slave Driver's Hands, it gives you area of effect, it gives you endurance charges, and it allows you to cast your traps from life instead of mana, which makes mana much easier. But I would also lose like 80 life and 90 resist and 30 chaos resist, and that's the reason why I ultimately decided to keep the gloves, because it's super comfortable to be mapping with 25 chaos res. That brings me to the next 3 items that are important, which is the wand, the amulet, and the shield. The wand is a +1 wand with spell damage. It's missing crit multi, so I crafted crit multi on there. Also, the spell damage could be much higher, but this was the wand I could afford. Ideally, you want this to be a +1/+1, but again, multiple divines. Amulet is the same story, +1 to cold skill gems. It should ideally have +1 cold, +1 all, but that goes for 6+ divines, which I didn't have. Also, there's no life on here. I opted to go for damage because I felt pretty comfortable, even though I'm only sitting at 4.5k life. It's actually, it's not easy to die. So let's take a bunch of damage here. Let's maybe take a little bit more damage. Come on, can you do something to me? Yeah, because once I throw a bunch of traps, that was a bad demonstration. Once I throw... Okay. Now I need to be damaged again. Guys, can you damage me? A little bit? Maybe not kill me outright. Okay, you need to do a little bit better than that. Can someone please attack me and not the other guys? I'm not sure what's happening here. Okay, now I'm damaged. I throw a bunch of traps and I'm basically back full. So it's maybe not the best demonstration, but you can see if I... Yeah, there we go. Bam, bam, bam. Traps thrown and I'm back full again. So yeah, it's very comfortable with that setup. So I decided to not go with life here, but with damage. And with the Anoint, that's also one thing I want to touch on later. You want to have Charisma on here, but I went for something else, which I will explain in a second. And then finally, the third item with +1, which could be a +2, which is too expensive, is the Shield. So again here, the Shield, which has spell damage, life, +1 to cold spell skill gems. So these 3 items, the Wand, the Amulet, and the Shield, together with a 21 Ice Trap, get you all the way to 24. You can imagine if you have a +2 shield, a +2 amulet, and a +2 wand, you get up to level 27. So more damage there. Finally, the final item that is very important for this build is because I do not have Slave Driver's Hands, which would allow me to cast trap skills from life or cast traps with life, is this ring that has non-challenging skills have -7 total mana cost, but also it has life, dexterity, which I actually need on items, and chaos resistance, which is another contributor to the chaos resistance that I have. And that makes it very comfortable unless I am running maps with reduced aura effectiveness, which reduces the aura of my clarity. I can just spam traps infinitely, even though I have only 115 mana unreserved, but that's more than enough. That's also another reason why I removed the trigger craft. So you can, in your wand, have a trigger craft and then put, for example, Assassin's Mark in here. But I found this to be too unreliable, and I'd rather cast Assassin's Mark manually. Same with Bear Trap, and I put both of them in my boots, which are linked with Life Tap, so that I don't have to worry about the mana, because the mana cost of Assassin's Mark and also Bear Trap is kind of high, and that would prevent you from spamming your ice traps all the way. So that's why I did that. And then the remaining items, the belt, just high life, bunch of resists, bunch of strength with which I need, and then crit chance life on the jewel I put in there together with some regen, and then the boots again, life, regen, move speed, chaos res. And for the implicits, I have increased cooldown recovery rate, which is really only important for flame dash, but that is important in boss fights. And then drop Scorched Ground while moving. That I wasn't sure of in the beginning because it really doesn't fit the the aesthetic of the character. But then again, Scorched Ground reduces enemy elemental resistances by another 10%, so that is just amazing. And then the final two items, the other ring, is just fixing life resistances and then put a bunch of damage on there. And then the helmet is probably the weakest item that I have because the life roll is terrible, the resistances are not great, but the Eldritch Implicits here are pretty important. 7% of fist damage recouped as life and 6% of fist damage taken as cold damage, with my passives allowing me to have like 76% cold res instead of 75, so a little bit more protection there. That's it for the items. For the passive tree, this is also very basic. So this is basically the leveling setup, not the endgame setup from Velena's Guide. It does not have a Lethal Pride. It instead it does not have the full cluster setup because the clusters are also ridiculously expensive, especially the large cluster. I just have a medium cluster with Guerrilla Tactics and Cal for Handling. And then I have a small cluster with Hatred, Mana, Reservation, Efficiency. And that is the other big difference that I did to Velena's Guide, because she goes for... so I have 6 auras, she also goes for 6 auras, but she fits in Determination. I cannot do that. I instead am running Vitality, Clarity, Skitterbots, Grace, Hatred, Precision. Vitality and Hatred are not max level. My Clarity is at 15. Did I say Hatred? I mean Vitality and Clarity. My Clarity is at 15. My Vitality is at 13. This is like with a bunch of testing so that I do not run out of mana. They should be at 20 really to be at their full effect, but I can't afford that. And Precision I really just have in here. I basically had the choice, do I want to have another level of Clarity or do I want to fit another aura in? And then I opted for the aura, not for the Precision aura effect, but for the Reservation Mastery, 8% increased damage for each aura or herald skills affecting you. That's the reason why I put Precision in here. And that, together with the Hatred Reservation Efficiency from the small cluster, allows me to run these auras. And then I have a Watcher's Eye here also, which gives me more Cold Pen, and it also gives me Unaffected by Enfeeble while affected by Grace. This is like the cheapest cluster jewel option you can go for, because it costs you just about a divine. If you want to have something which is Hatred Vitality or Hatred Clarity, or even a 3-stat that is useful for you, then it gets very expensive. You're speaking like 9-10 divines already. that's it for the passive tree. Then Pantheon, obviously we go for Brine King because that gives us freeze avoidance together with our Ascendancy, which we do have here, gives us immunity to Ignite and Shock. So we are immune to freeze, Ignite and Shock, and that is basically all you need. You do not really need, I mean, yes, you do need immunity to Brittle, Sap and Shock if you can, but you don't always have the option to do that, and there's not so many instances where I felt I'm dying from Brittle, Sap and Shock, so I don't mind at all. And yeah, as for the playstyle, as you can see, I'm a huge fan of the Trapper playstyle. It feels a little bit like the Frozen Sorc from Diablo 2, because it's like, yeah, you cast at a location and then like a second later things explode, or not explode but shatter. So that's kind of nice. I really enjoy that, and it's again super safe because everything you run into is blinded. Whatever is blinded deals less damage to you, and then as soon as a trap explodes on top of them, they're usually frozen. If they're not frozen, then yeah, you just continue to throw traps and then either they die or they are frozen. So it's very, very comfortable and very, very enjoyable. And yeah, oh, look at that, second operative strongbox. Very, very comfy, super happy about this. Also super happy, and I can open it again. And super happy that this is finally the very first build I could have killed Feared with. So I never, as I said, I never tried Feared before. I probably should have tried it on my Righteous Fire Inquisitor a couple of leagues back when Righteous Fire Inquisitor was in its prime, but there I didn't have the balls to do so. I still think that Righteous Fire has... it had more damage, so based on PoE, which is also linked in the description below, if I have 20 traps on the ground and they all trigger at once, I do 30 million hit damage. That's not DPS, that's just all the 20 traps exploding, and then I have to basically lay the traps again. So the real DPS is probably around 1.5 million, if anything. So it's not that much. For comparison, if you go for the full build, with Slave Driver's Hand, with +2 gear, you end up with 90 million hit DPS. So you, yeah, do 3 times the damage that I'm doing. Sanctums with this also, it's okay. As soon as you can freeze guards, everything is fine. If you can't get the freezes off because of the afflictions you have or because you have a lot of life, then it gets a little bit tricky. But other than that, it's quite okay. So I completed one Sanctum fully with also killing the final boss. I haven't played that much, so that's why I haven't done many Sanctums. Overall, still very happy with this. Hidden Devil 96. Probably won't continue this further because I reached all the goals I wanted with this character. Now we're going to move on to something else. I will link the PoE to this. I think I said that already in the description. And then you can maybe suggest what could have done differently with this character if you played that, what else you would have done, or what other suggestions would be for this. And with that, I'll leave you with the clip of me struggling for the very first time and with very little portals left, succeeding against the Feared. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Bye bye. 52%. Jesus Christ.
Grasp your mortality tightly. Twin terrors. Not.
Ow. What the fuck is...
Another
No, not another challenger.
Rise and fight. Life is so brutal. Not
Au! Fuck. Also mich bringt tatsächlich das Synthid um.
grasp your mortality tightly.
Was macht er?
Mich umbringen. Ich weiß nicht durch was. Seine Attacks sind irgendwie nicht wirklich sichtbar. Sie macht übelst große Degen-Ringe,
Mortal flesh is so
die ich nicht sehe, weil meine Ice Traps die überdecken.
grasp your mortality tightly. None resist my entropy.
You are in fucking culling range! Ugh, shit!
Resist the assault.
Ist jetzt weg.
Mortal flesh is so fallible.
Jetzt habe ich Aziri, Shaper und Kaiola.
The assault.
Und es ist einfach zu viel!
Mortal flesh is so fallible. Twin terrors.
No Twin Terrors, fuck you. The whole arena is full with shit.
Resist the assault.
No!
Life is so brittle.
Just need a moment to catch my...
Give yourself to the void.
Ist Aziri jetzt tot?
Shadow, rise and fight. Resist the assault. Give yourself to the void.
Alter.
Life is so brittle.
Wo ist er denn?
Grasp your mortality tightly. Shadow, rise and fight.
No, don't rise, don't fight.
Life is so brittle. Resist the assault. None resist my entropy. Mortal flesh is so fallible. Grasp your mortality tightly.
Fucking friend. No!
Life drain away.
Yes! Oh, oh. Oh, Jesus Christ. What a clusterfuck.